Some of our best conversations start with good questions. Questions we've been meaning to ask. Questions that keep us curious, and questions that lead us deeper into courage and connection. We've crafted this series around 4 guiding questions. I've been meaning to ask, where are you from? Where does it hurt? What do you need? Where do we go from here? These questions aren't surface level. They invite us to tell our stories, share our pain, care for one another, and dream about a new way forward together. Join Sycamore Creek for this 5-week series on Sundays in October, and join a small group this fall to explore these questions deeper.
I've been meaning to ask about an embarrassing moment for you as a pastor, or an embarrassing mistake that you've made. Tom, get us started. Introduce yourself, your name, your campus, and then what's an embarrassing moment?
Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how embarrassing? Like embarrassing? Like
you can take it anywhere you want, anywhere on the scale.
Wounded by it, and
Yikes.
Yeah.
I've never shared it before, or
no, just
Okay.
keep it light.
Okay.
Speak from your scars, not from your wounds.
So
There we go.
there was this time that the annual meeting of United Methodists in the state of Michigan was meeting at the Breslin Center here in East Lansing. And we as a church were doing a church in a pub demonstration just down the street at Harrison Roadhouse. And we had 100 people signed up for this thing. I mean, it was like we were one of the displays of like cool things that are happening in Lansing with United Methodists. And Jeremy and I worked really hard with Harrison Roadhouse to build the relationship and craft this like worship service. Yeah, set up the sound, the presentation, the TV, the food, everything. And about 20 minutes before the service started and everybody's like coming in, the electricity in that part of Lansing goes down. Just totally like
You're
the
making
place
me
goes
sweat.
It just goes
Like,
dark.
the story.
So I have like 100 of my colleagues showing up to learn from me or see like how we do church here at Sycamore Creek. And all of our work just goes. And it happened that in the back of my car, I had that little speaker that's like battery powered, and we were able to use that. So we had a demonstration of church in the pub in the dark.
Not the way you intended it.
Not the way I intended it. It turned out, though, in some ways that it was a good demonstration of improvising. And then the power turned on like 20 minutes into the service, and while I'm in the middle of preaching, and Jeremy quickly like gets together everything. And yeah. I think I forgot to introduce myself.
You did.
You did.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I'm Tom Arthur. I'm the lead pastor at Sycamore Creek, and I'm also the campus pastor here at Eastwood, where we're sitting in our new cafe.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Mikkel?
Yeah, so I'm Mikkel White, and I'm the campus pastor at the South Lansing campus. And I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm only have just finished my 3rd year of being a pastor, really. So I don't have the longevity.
The more years you get, the more the embarrassment adds up.
Well,
It does.
We'll see.
More opportunities
Okay,
to embarrass yourself.
So a couple of series ago, we did a series on Thessalonians, people of the light.
Yeah.
And we had various topics, living faithfully, and then there was like a talk on sex, and then there was a talk on the end times and like eschatology, which is a fancy way of saying the end times. And on that week, Kathy Doby, one of our volunteers, was speaking. And so we were joking about we gave her the hard talk on the end times. And I was like, well, last week I had sex. And one of our volunteers from the back was like, I did too. And I was like, oh. So that was a little embarrassing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that was during the run-through. That was not during the actual service.
Man,
So I only embarrassed myself.
I was going to go back and check the tape, but maybe not.
I only embarrassed myself.
Open
in front
mouth,
of our
insert
volunteers.
foot.
Yeah, basically.
Yes.
How about you, Mark?
Well, I'm Mark. I'm the campus pastor of Sycamore Creek and the executive pastor of Sycamore Creek. And many years ago, we were doing church in a diner, and we were at Jackie's Diner, and I was really excited to preach there, and I got really, really into the message. And I was talking about how God really cares about each one of us, and God cares about the whole of who we are. And so much so that like he sent his son, and it shows us that God is willing to, and I meant to say, fight for our hearts. But what came out was God farts. And as soon as I said God farts, I lost everyone. We all started laughing. Now, maybe at that moment I was saying something theologically profound because, it was pointing to Jesus' divinity, but
I so wish that you had made the same mistake right now.
Same mistake right
Yeah,
now.
like you were saying. And what I meant to say is God, and then you said God farts.
God farts again.
Whatever.
it was
You're
just
better
once.
prepared this time.
I'm much better prepared this time. So today I'm hosting a conversation between the three of us, and we're wrapping up our series, I've Been Meaning to Ask. Mm-hmm. And so throughout this series, we've been looking at these different questions, and we're using those to cultivate courageous conversations. And that's kind of what we're doing today,
Yeah.
A courageous conversation. That's why we started out with our embarrassing moment. And so throughout this series, we've looked at where are you from? We've talked about where does it hurt? Talked about what do you need? And we've talked about where do you go from here? And today we're going to take those 4 questions and we're going to direct them at Sycamore Creek, and we're going to have a conversation I've been meaning to ask about Sycamore Creek.
Okay.
And our hope is that in the same way, like we've answered these questions throughout this series for ourselves as we've shared messages with our campuses. We're going to direct these toward our church and hopefully get to know our church a little bit better.
This is a little raw and unscripted today, right? Because
this is totally unscripted. This is the first time we've been this unscripted.
Yeah, we
You
usually
had no
practice
idea
with.
what my embarrassing story was.
Yeah, I had
before
no
started.
idea what you were going to say.
No, I didn't.
Now, as a reminder at Sycamore Creek, our mission is to ignite authentic life in Christ and fan it into an all-consuming flame. And we're all in, each of us, on the mission of our church. So our first question that we've been meaning to ask about Sycamore Creek is, where are you from? And I think, Tom, you've been a pastor the longest of Sycamore Creek, so you're a good person to answer this question. Tell us a little bit about where is Sycamore Creek from?
Yeah, so Sycamore Creek was founded in 2000 by a rebel grandma, Barb Flory, who wanted to plant a church such that atheists, which she was at one time an atheist, would feel comfortable being at. And she was appointed by the bishop to Holt United Methodist Church to build a launch team. And in November of 2000, she had 40 people that launched Sycamore Creek. And it was started out at Lansing Christian School. She retired in 2009, and I started. I was the second pastor. It's kind of tough spot to follow a founding pastor, but I survived the first couple of years. When I first came, we were meeting at Lansing Christian School, and I got immediately asked, when are we going to get a building? So we ran a capital campaign, started saving. 2 or 3 years in, I got this crazy idea to launch church in a diner, and we did that, and it was successful. A couple more years later, Potterville United Methodist Church came to us and said, hey, what would you think about adopting us? So we did that. At about the same time, we were launching church in a pub, and so we kind of did those 2 things at the same time. Right before all of that, we ended up buying a building in South Lansing. So then we ended up with 2 campuses, one in Potterville, one in South Lansing. For a while, we had church in a pub and church in a diner. And then fast forward several years, and Asbury United Methodist Church came to us and said, would you adopt us? And we were like, well, let's give it a try. And we did this adoption a little bit different. We shut the building down for a year, remodeled it as a performing arts center as well as a church. And we just opened, we had our grand opening 2 or 3 weeks ago. We brought Mikkel on a little over a year ago now to take South Lansing, and I moved to do this launch. That's like Sycamore Creek's history in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. I've been here for 15 years, or I'm in my 15th year. That's a long time.
That's a long time. You're well positioned to tell us about the history of our church.
Yeah. And one of the really fun things about Sycamore Creek is I think I have a 3 to 7 year attention span. So every 3 to 7 years, I need some new challenge. And Sycamore Creek has been a place where we've been able to reinvent ourselves as a church, which I think has helped us stay relevant to the culture and to our mission of igniting authentic life in Christ. So I could go into lots more detail.
You came to Sycamore Creek through the appointive system?
Yes, I was appointed by the bishop.
Tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was on staff I met my wife at Wheaton College, and she was from Northern Michigan, and she was a Presbyterian PK, pastor's kid, but got a job as a United Methodist, or in a United Methodist church in Petoskey, as the youth director. And so when I graduated, I ended up also attending that church. I'd never been in a United Methodist church until that point. And in my time there, I was there for 7 or 8 years. I experienced a call to ministry. One of the calls to ministry when you're a United Methodist pastor is you are willing to participate in the appointment system, which is to say that the bishop appoints you. And that's not just an arbitrary appointment. It's like in consultation with the church and you and everything. And but in the end, if the bishop wants you to go somewhere, it's kind of like the army. You know, the general says we need you over here. You're willing to go.
Yeah.
So they appointed me to Sycamore Creek, and I get reappointed every year. I always tell people, if you really want me to stick around, then the best thing to do is to keep inviting people, because they tend not to want to mess with things that are
going well.
Mm-hmm. And for the most part, Sycamore Creek's gone really well for 15 years, or they would have sent me somewhere else probably.
Yeah. So Mikhail, I just heard Tom kind of talk about how he came to Sycamore Creek, and I heard one of the things you appreciate about Sycamore Creek is that we reinvent ourselves and we change, and that works really well for you. Mm-hmm. How did you come to Sycamore Creek, Mikhail, and what's one thing that you appreciate about Sycamore Creek?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in North Carolina, and sometime as an adult, I wound up at a United Methodist church. But it wasn't like a typical United Methodist church that was formal or had like structured liturgy and things like that. So it felt in a lot of ways similar to what Sycamore Creek is. And it was there that I experienced a call to become a pastor. So when I graduated from seminary, I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to go. And I wound up at a non-denominational church in Chicago, leading a campus there. And we were there, we moved in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. And unfortunately, the church just didn't weather the COVID very well. Their budget didn't. And so they wound up closing the campus I was leading. And I had met Tom. He had come out to like learn from this church in Chicago in 2021. And we had had a conversation. I feel like we both kind of learned from each other. We became Facebook friends. And so
I didn't know I was on a recruiting mission. Right. I was just going there trying to learn from this big multi-site.
Yeah. And I didn't know that I would be looking for anything in a year after that. So when I realized that my position was being eliminated, and that Tom and his church was looking for a new campus pastor, I was like, let me check that out. And it wound up being a really great fit as someone who went to a Wesleyan tradition, like a United Methodist approved seminary.
Look at you. You
right?
got the language down.
But had so much experience in sort of less traditional model churches. It just wound up being a good fit. So I came here a little over a year ago, and I have really, really appreciated how Sycamore Creek is in the community in really substantial ways, and not just waiting for the community to come to the church. And then when people do come to the church, that it's welcoming and offering a place of belonging for people. So I've really appreciated that.
You just passed a big milestone, though, in the appointment system.
Yes. So after being here for a little, like a year, I was eligible to be appointed by our district committee on ordained ministry. And I am officially a licensed local pastor appointed to Sycamore Creek.
Congratulations.
You're not just a direct hire now. You are officially appointed.
I'm officially a pastor.
So you can preside over the sacraments at Sycamore Creek, and you don't have to have me standing there beside you and all that kind of stuff.
I can do communion all by myself.
All right.
Well, with God. It's not really by myself, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Super
How about
exciting.
You, Mark?
Well, I grew up in the Grand Rapids area, and I grew up going to the Christian Reformed Church. And when Jan and I moved to Lansing, at some point in our journey through grad school, we were looking for a church here in the Lansing area. and we stumbled upon Lansing Christian School, which is where Sycamore Creek was meeting. I had no idea Sycamore Creek was United Methodist and what I was getting into. But I love the church. And what I mean by that is I love the people. I love the way that our church lives out its faith. I was really attracted to that. And Jan and I connected with the church. I had no clue at the time, as I was finishing up my PhD, that it would lead to me becoming a pastor of this church. But that happened through our adoption of Potterville United Methodist. And through that adoption process, I experienced a call to become a pastor. And I've now been a pastor of Sycamore Creek for 7 years. And when I think of Sycamore
7 years.
7 years.
You've been 7 years.
Yeah.
And you say that, I don't remember this part of the story, but you've said it enough times that it must be true. That
you keep on trying to block it out, but I won't let you.
I called you and said you had 24 hours to decide.
You did. You called and said we were thinking about exploring an adoption, and you knew that I was wrestling with a call to pastoral ministry, and you were like, is this the opportunity? And, we need to let the cabinet know, because they're trying to figure out what they were going to do, and you let me know by tomorrow what your choice is.
Wow.
Yeah.
7
No
years
pressure.
later, here you are.
And yet it was a no-brainer. Like, it took Jan and I 15 minutes to realize this is where God is leading us. And I'm so happy that I made that decision.
Yeah.
Now, I do have a science background, and one of the things I really appreciate about Sycamore Creek is that we're able to engage our faith with our minds. And I love that this is a place where we can ask questions and we can look at multiple perspectives and that we can wrestle with things together. Given my science background, that was really important to me for a faith community. We're going to pause a couple times today during the message for discussion, and we have a first discussion question for you, and that is, tell us about how you came to Sycamore Creek. Let's take a moment, turn to someone near you, put your answer in the comments. Let's answer that question. How did you come to Sycamore Creek?
I'll just hold on to this.
Okay, that's a good idea.
When I don't like something one of you said, I'll go.
So the second question that I've been meaning to ask about Sycamore Creek is a serious one. Where does it hurt? And I'm going to ask you to answer for your respective campuses for this one. And it's okay if there's some overlap. Like, there's a lot of common experiences I think that people have across our campuses. But when we think about people who consider Sycamore Creek their church, so people at your campus, how would you answer this question of what hurts are present at your campus? I think for myself, for the Potterville campus, we have a lot of people who've experienced a lot of loss over the past couple of years. I last year did the most funeral services of any year I've ever led as a pastor.
Wow.
And I think it's both an acknowledgement of the people who are part of our congregation experiencing a lot of loss, but then the new people who have come into our congregation, there's also been a lot of loss there. And so, I think one of the hurts, and this isn't true of everyone, but it's definitely a lot of people on the Potterville campus, is grief over the loss of a loved one. And there's a lot of hurt and pain there, and a lot of adjustments to make in life and healing that is taking place over time. Mikkel, how about you? What's a hurt that's present at the South Lansing campus?
Yeah, I think this one is kind of bittersweet. Like, we're cheering on Eastwood, and there is a loss of like people that we used to see every week, and they're launching, and we're commissioning them to Eastwood, and so it's definitely like complex emotions because we're so excited about what's happening here at Eastwood, and we miss seeing those people, and it feels a little sad sometimes.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Tom, how about you? As a new campus, so you get a lot of new people. Do you have any sense of something that's happening here?
Well,
where people are hurting?
I think when we're going to talk in a little bit about the community, I'll talk about the new people that are coming. But for this particular answer, I'm going to talk about the folks from Asbury who we adopted, and there have been there's a significant number of them who have stuck with us through it and are there almost every Sunday, and their presence and their encouragement just means the world to me and to everyone else who's here to see, like, hey, this is going on. There's ways that the legacy of Asbury continues on in a lot of ways. The meeting of the needs, physical needs in the community, in that respect, is a huge part of the culture of what's being built here. The community garden, the tiny pantry. There was just again, that sort of reaching out and meeting real physical, tangible needs. The use of the kitchen here is a really important part of the culture of Asbury. But this also sort of expression of a United Methodist Church isn't for everybody. And there's a lot of people from Asbury who this wasn't for them for multiple reasons. And I think most of them have found other United Methodist churches that are more traditional, kind of like you were describing earlier on. We're a sort of weird United Methodist church. I sometimes say we're weird but loyal. And that I think there is some pain there, some hurt. And I bet if you ask those folks who have gone to other churches, there's probably even more pain or grief or sort of struggling. But I think that is a part of what's going on here in the midst of the newness. We can't neglect there's some challenges too.
So there's definitely pain that we have in our congregation, like in the people who consider Sycamore Creek their church, but there's also pain out in our communities. And one of the things you said, you like that we're involved in our communities. Yeah. We're aware of the pain that's around us. Mikkel, what's one area of pain that you would say is around the South Lansing campus and the community around there?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind to me is economic hardship, job loss, financial struggles. We see this sometimes in, like, we had some vandalism of a vehicle in our parking lot, or we had someone looking for support who comes into the church just asking for support. They don't have a place to stay, they don't have an income, and so they're looking for a group of people who can help them. And then there's like people who have jobs and have places to stay, but are just struggling to make it to get by. And so I think that's a thing that a lot of people in the South Lansing area are struggling with.
Yeah. How about you, Tom? What would you say is one hurt?
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier, there's just a ton of new people here. In fact, when you look out on Sunday morning, there's just a crowd of people that don't know each other. One of the groups, or I think the sort of needs that we are meeting as a church, is a hurt around people who haven't given up on God, but they have given up on the church. Or they're like, there's a thread left. Or I was just having dinner with a family in our neighborhood the other night who have come to church several times now, but hadn't been involved in a church for years now. But when they saw that we have a commitment to LGBTQIA inclusion, a commitment to racial equity, or working towards racial equity, a commitment to gender equity, and so on, there's just a lot of pain around that, of people being excluded because of things that, for whatever reason. And their last, almost maybe, I don't know, is their last shred of hope in the church is showing up here to a church and saying, if we live up to this advertising slogan that we've been putting out there, and like, do we really hit different?
Yeah.
Like, they're longing for that for a church. There's pieces of it that they miss. The community, a group of people who are seeking justice and seeking Jesus all at the same time. But there's so much baggage that's been accumulated that they're like, is this church just going to be more baggage? And I've had a lot of people say, you guys really do hit different, which is, that's fabulous to hear.
Fabulous to
when
hear.
People tell me that. I'm sure not everybody. That's definitely a need or a hurt that exists.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think of the Potterville area. I think what you were saying, Mikkel, resonates with me. In Potterville, there's a lot of people who just don't have the resources they need to be successful in life, and they're struggling to make ends meet. I think one of the reasons we have the Potterville Food Pantry is we're hoping to create margin for people, whether they actually need food or not. To not have a food bill or to reduce a food bill creates margin where you can then spend that money in other places. And there's a lot of people in the Potterville area who are struggling, who are, as prices have risen, they're on a fixed income and it only goes so far. And that's people across the whole spectrum of ages. It's families who are having to band together and live together. It's older people who are wrestling with price increases. And so we recognize that there's pain around that there not being enough to get by. We're going to pause again for a discussion question here. And our next question for discussion is, we each come to Sycamore Creek and we all experience pain. And so you can enter this however you want. It doesn't need to be super deep. It can be a lighter thing. But here's our question. What's one hurt that you bring to Sycamore Creek? And of course, does it need to be a hurt that you're willing to share? Let's take a moment and discuss that.
You can trim out everything that they've said and just leave mine.
There we go.
That's how we roll around here.
So the third question that I've been meaning to ask is, what do you need? What do you need? And so again, let's focus this question on each of our campuses. We'll start with you, Tom. At Eastwood, what's one need that the Eastwood campus has?
It's like super obvious. We need teams. We need people who are willing to build systems and processes and rhythms around here. And then we need people to invite. So
okay.
Don't wait until somebody asks you to do something. Come ask. Be proactive about it. Take your passion, your talent, and find a place to share those here at Sycamore Creek Eastwood. And then invite a friend, and then invite a family member, and invite a coworker, invite a fellow student. Invite.
So
that's the need.
Invitation was really a clear theme there.
Yeah, invite.
Okay. Yep.
Did I say that again? Invite.
Yes.
Hold on. Let me look at the camera. Invite.
There we go. How about you, Mikkel? What's one need of the South Lansing campus?
I think that coming out of the pandemic, we're still really rebuilding a lot of our teams. And I think specifically, like, our media team is amazing. And when I say amazing, I mean they're so dedicated. And there are like two people who, like, they're the only two people who do the sound right now. And that's like a lot for them to carry. They're amazing. They're dedicated. They're happy to show up. And I think we really have a need for your advice about not using the word need is replaying in my brain right now.
Yes.
But that's what the question is, right?
That's the question. What do you need?
We need to rebuild a lot of our teams. And so for people who have gifts and have talents and are taking ownership of this vision and this mission of Sycamore Creek and South Lansing, that's a big need that we have. And also to invite. I mean, that's like, I think if Sycamore Creek, South Lansing's your home, your faith community, then who are the people in your life that would benefit from a community like that? Bring them along.
Here's something that's interesting is we've launched mostly out of South Lansing, but we've had a handful of people from Potterville who've come with us as well. And some of those folks who've come with us to launch this were not actively involved in anywhere, and they've become foundational to the teams around here. And I think in that respect, like, every church has everything they need right in it. It's just creating the opportunity or the sort of sense that what you have is something that can contribute in amazing ways to our mission. You can partner with us by using it here. And that's been fun for me to see people that, when I was pastor at South Lansing, were not really that involved, and all of a sudden, like, they're foundational to what we're doing here. And they've stepped up to the plate and are making it happen.
Yeah, I think when I think about Potterville, when I first started at Potterville, Potterville was pretty tired, and they were really excited to have me show up. And I took on a lot of things in Potterville. And what we need in Potterville is for Pastor Mark to do less. I like doing things, and I like serving our church, but we're at a growth stage in Potterville where I need to start doing less, and I need to empower people more. And that is, people, like you said, Mikkel, serving, but it's also people leading things, organizing things. I want to empower people and support them in doing that, but I can't do everything long term. Let's get into this together. And I think like the two of you, I could also add an invitation in there. And that's because I think Sycamore Creek has an amazing take on Jesus and what it means to follow Jesus. And we're inviting people into something amazing. And if that's been your experience with Sycamore Creek, like, help us share it with more people who need to have that too. And that's, again, where we recognize there's needs in our community. And so I'm going to take us back again to our community. Mikkel, what's one need that you see in the broader South Lansing community, like outside of the church?
And one need that we're like Sycamore Creek is working to fill. When I just read this just now, I thought about the anti-racist work that South Lansing has been part of, and really Sycamore Creek, but South Lansing in particular is really working with CORE, Communities Organizing for Racial Equity, and partnering with other churches and people in our community to not only do like outward work, but that internal work of addressing the ways that racism has affected each one of us. And I think that's a big need that we have in our community that Sycamore Creek is working to fill.
Yeah, how about you, Tom? What about Eastwood?
Well, one of the things that we've done here at this campus is really we've remodeled the building to be a complete asset to the community, and meeting that need in all kinds of ways, that some of them that are surprising to me. But the first and primary one was our relationship with community theater groups. So we remodeled the sanctuary as a performing arts center, stage one. But I'm just finding I get calls or emails constantly like, could our thing happen here? The jazz department at Lansing Community College is going to do their performances here. We've had some dance groups in the area that want to do their dance performances here. We've had some other faith communities that have reached out to us and said, hey, could we maybe meet in your space? I knew the need existed, but until we finished it and like it was actually there, I didn't know how big the need was.
When I think about Potterville and one of the needs that we're trying to fill for the community is to connect across differences. One of the things that we say in Potterville when we're at our best, we're a multi-generational campus worshiping with people of different ages. And I think it's very easy, based on our experiences and what generation we're a part of, to spend time with people who are of a similar age. And I think beyond that, we're trying to bring people across political differences together. We're also bringing people in Potterville, we have some people who have lived in Potterville their whole life, and we have other people who are relatively new to Potterville. And Potterville has changed a lot over the years, and so you have people with very different perspectives on Potterville and what Potterville is like. And amid all those differences, I think we just really all want connection. And we tend to just hang out with people who are the same. And one of the things that we're trying to do in Potterville, I think it's good for our city, is to bring people together across differences.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about Sycamore Creek, is that it is a church that has a foot in the city, a foot in the suburbs, and a foot in rural or sort of town and country. And that gives us the chance to practice building relationships that our broader nation and world needs. We get the chance to maybe be a little demonstration plot for how to have those relationships across those differences in a different kind of way.
Yeah. So again, we're going to turn it back to you and give you an opportunity to discuss and reflect on this. Our next question for discussion is, what's one need that you need to have met at Sycamore Creek? We all come to Sycamore Creek with different needs, things we're looking for. Turn to someone next to you or put it in the chat. What's one need that you need to have met at Sycamore Creek?
Clapper.
Oh.
So the fourth question that I've been meaning to ask about Sycamore Creek Church is, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? And you can answer these questions with whatever comes to your mind, whether it's our church as a whole, your campus, however you want to answer it. Tom, we'll start with you. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so where the Eastwood campus goes from here is actually taking this idea of a space that's used by a whole bunch of different people, and then working through all of the pinches and crunches that are for sure going to come up. Pinches being small broken expectations, crunches being big broken expectations, or lots of little ones that add up. When you have different communities all trying to inhabit one space together. And Sarah and I have a lot of experience navigating that because we've lived in some form of cooperative living, or we practice in Christian hospitality. For most of our 26 years of marriage, we've had somebody else living with us in our house, or we lived with multiple people in our house besides just our biological family. It reminds me of, in those settings, a lot of times there's a poster that's in the kitchen, hanging on the kitchen, that says, everybody wants a revolution and nobody wants to do the dishes. And the revolution at this campus is, hey, we just remodeled this to be more than a church. And then the dishes are going to be, how do we take care of the building in a way that doesn't just serve ourselves, but serves the rest of the people who use it. And sometimes that's going to mean doing the proverbial dishes that you didn't dirty, or vacuuming the floors, mopping it, taking the trash out. Like, there's a million things that are going to come up. And doing like what our role renegotiation model says, which is you go back to the beginning and you role renegotiate the expectations when there's a pinch and a crunch. And at its best, the role renegotiation model and that experience happens with planned, like where you plan regular times for renegotiation, and you don't just have to wait until expectations are broken or enough of them add up that you're frustrated. That's where we're going to go as a community.
I kind of left the question open-ended so that I could answer it open-ended. When I think of our church as a whole, I think of like, where do we go from here? Well, we're 3 campuses that move forward together. And like you just said with building use, Tom, there's going to be some pinches and crunches that happen with that, but we're committed to moving forward together as one church. And I think the potential that we have is people come here to our church and hopefully they encounter God and they encounter healing and they encounter transformation, and they get some idea of something better that is available to them. And then we offer that to our broader community. And I think of Potterville, I think of our campus, and the wonderful thing about Potterville is our church is right in the center of Potterville. And I think our church there is positioned to have an impact on the city as a whole by being a community in the center of Potterville that is like a redeemed community, a healthy community, a transformed community, something that, you know, we're healing and we're moving towards something better together. And I think as a church, we have that to offer to a lot of people throughout Lansing, Potterville, a lot of different areas.
One of the things I've always been a little envious of you as the pastor at our Potterville campus is that your mission field is really clear. The city of Potterville is very distinct and clear. When you're a pastor in Lansing, it's like, what exactly is the mission field? And I think at our Eastwood campus, that's become really, really clear. But it's still not quite as geographically clear.
That's true.
As is in Potterville. So I think you're right. Like, our Potterville campus is like you were the community center before Eastwood was trying to do that in a much more dispersed mission field.
Yeah. So how about you, Mikkel? How would you answer this tricky question of where do we go from here?
Yeah. So, I mean, my sense is sort of a combination of what you both are saying, and also, so we're hosting people in our building quite a bit. The theater groups who are performing here at Eastwood are rehearsing at South Lansing, and we're hosting like a neighborhood craft group, and what else are we hosting? Like the neighborhood association meeting, and it seems like when I'm there on a weeknight, there's frequently like 2 or sometimes 3 community groups in our building. And so like one really practical thing is we're working to make our basement level like more welcoming and inviting. And so that's like super practical, but I'm sure we'll have pinches and crunches just like Eastwood will. And I think that one of the things that I'm sensing about South Lansing is that I don't want to say we're in an identity crisis. I feel like that's a little too dramatic, but what is our mission field? Who are we? Like, what are we about? Because we're doing a lot of the same things that Eastwood is doing, but it seems like Eastwood is going sort of a step further with it. And so who are we? What are we about? Obviously, it's the mission of Sycamore Creek, igniting authentic life and fanning it into an all-consuming flame. Yes. And how does that look? on a week-to-week basis. And some of that is probably me being here for a year and like me still figuring that out. But I think with this transition of Eastwood launching, there's like a fresh question that's being asked. And I think that's part of where South Lansing is going in the future, is like answering that question together.
So as we've been talking today, there's ways that people are going to influence each other as they have conversations and reflect on what we're talking about. And maybe those will be even more important than anything that you and I might say. We have one final question for discussion here. And the final question has to do with spaces. Now, I'm going to say spaces in quotes because I don't necessarily mean geographic or physical spaces, but they could be people groups, things like that. What's one place where you think that Sycamore Creek needs to go from here? Where do we need to go as a future? I'm going to give you a moment to turn to someone near you to put your answer in the chat. Let's take a moment and discuss that final question.
Clack on, clack off, clack on, clack off.
So as we move forward as a church, we're 3 different campuses, but we're one church, and we hope that you got to know our church a little bit better today. We hope that you got to know each of us and the ways we're experiencing our campuses a little bit better as we move forward as one church to ignite authentic life in Christ and to fan it into an all-consuming flame. Now, this series has all been about questions, and we want to continue to ask questions as a church, to wrestle together. We're curious. We also recognize that there's a lot of hurts and there's needs that are present within our church and in the community around us, and we're going to continue to show compassion to each other. And we're going to continue to try new things. We're going to continue to reinvent ourselves, as you mentioned, Tom, and we're going to continue to work to be creative. And hopefully we're going to continue to move forward together as a church and doing all those things. And one of the ways we're going to move forward together is next week we're going to start a new series called The Greatness Principle, and we're going to be talking throughout that series about serving, and look for lots of opportunities throughout that series where you can get connected and be a part of serving here at Sycamore Creek. We hope to see you again next week.